JJ McCarthy might be the most polarizing quarterback prospect in this draft. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about him, and then I'll chime in. We're not going to talk about whether or not he's going fourth. This is more a conversation about what team will go and make JJ McCarthy their own. Alex, is there something you see on the board or maybe even something off the board that makes sense for JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, fascinating, as you mentioned, Dave. Certainly a polarizing prospect here. My personal viewpoint regarding JJ McCarthy is I think there's a lot of evaluators that are maybe conflating his lack of experience for upside, when in reality, I think he has a long way to go as a prospect. I think there are some tools there, but we really just haven't seen a lot from JJ McCarthy, where I think he's deserving of being a top 10 or even really a top 15 selection. That being said, in the NFL, we know that we have coaches that potentially have very big egos and have done a tremendous job developing players. And they may think, like, I'm the guy to do this. Like, let's look at his physical tools. That's why a guy like, Drew Lock remained in the quarter or in the league for as long as he has, is because he possesses elite tools and coaches believe that they can ultimately develop him. So yeah, I'm personally down on JJ McCarthy. To me, I have him as the number 5 quarterback here. I know that's not a super contrarian take there. But yeah, if I'm going to go somewhere, I think the connection that I've seen a lot is a lot of Sean Payton to JJ McCarthy. Obviously, we know Kevin O'Connell being interested there as well, and the Vikings. But yeah, I ultimately would probably go with the Broncos here as my best selection for JJ McCarthy. I think the Sean Payton will potentially fall in love with some of his tools, and I think there's a potential connection there. But again, this is so fluid. This changes on a minute-by-minute basis, not necessarily something I'm looking to lock in now.
Right. All right. So plus 550 for JJ McCarthy. We've seen that if he does go to Denver. What do you see with JJ McCarthy, EC?
All right, so I saw McCarthy in person play against TCU in the semifinal game a couple years ago. He threw for 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, ran for 52 yards. Watching him in person, I thought Michigan kept the reins on him. He's a talented player, don't get me wrong. Seems more of a game manager to me than a star. I saw Joe Burrow also in the Fiesta Bowl in person the other year. And Burrow, you could tell this was the year before he blew up. He had Chase and Justin Jefferson as receivers. And you're like, this guy's got the arm talent. He makes plays down the field. I don't know if I wasn't buying into McCarthy like that. With that said, the interesting thing that you just mentioned, Proppy, with the Broncos, in all of Sean Payton's tenure, and I read this, you know how many quarterbacks any of his teams have taken in the first round? 0. Now, he had Drew Brees for that many years, so you didn't really need to. And so that you got to throw that out. They had Tony Romo on the roster of the Cowboys, so I get that. I'm going with a couple of teams here for McCarthy. I think the Broncos are a great lean at plus 550. Here's another thought. Remember when, I think Arizona did this last year? They traded out of 3, and then they traded down, then they traded back up into the top 10 to get an offensive lineman, Paris Johnson. I think it was 6 or 7, something like that. I could see the Patriots trading down, getting all that compensation from Minnesota, and then trading back and getting in, without giving up. You gained a first rounder next year. If you traded the 12th pick and a second to move up and get McCarthy in the, if he slips beyond 5, I could see where it makes sense. At plus 750, I think there's some value there.
And so that would give actually 2 paths to McCarthy landing on the Patriots. One, if they just stay at 3, they could do that. And 2, just like you said, EC, they do the trade down. They give up a lot of what they get in that trade to move back up. And I think that that's something that's worth considering, not only with them, but if Washington got that call that we talked about in the first segment and they move down, they could do the exact same thing. A lot of fluidity with those picks, although we don't really see early first round picks getting traded. I wonder if there's an exception this year. And with that being said, I wonder if there's a way here for McCarthy to not even last to Denver's pick, meaning Denver would have to trade up to go and get him. I think this is the guy Minnesota's wanted all along. Yes, we can talk about him as a game manager. I think that's his floor. I think he's ready to be an NFL game manager right now. The offense that he's been running in Michigan is very pro style. I think he can handle it. I think he's got good enough size. I think his arm is just barely good enough, but I think he's got upside to get better there. And so when I see JJ McCarthy and I think about him being in a good environment, look at the environment he was in Michigan. That offensive line was awesome. Roman Wilson was his top receiver. He's awesome. You're going to love him in fantasy next year. And now you put him on a team like the Vikings. They've got a good offensive line. They've got amazing wide receivers. I think he could be a plug-and-play starter for the Minnesota Vikings. And I think this is why Minnesota traded for that extra first-round pick. I don't know if they've got an intention to move all the way up to 2 or to 3. I think they want McCarthy. I know the odds stink. It's minus 110. But I think that's where I would go with it for JJ McCarthy if we get to that point. A week or two from now, he's sitting there at 110. I think I might put a sprinkle on that.